In today's episode, we're speaking to Steve Kidd. Steve is a marketing genius. He has over 35 years worth of experience in marketing and is currently working helping other authors. He himself is a best-selling author of over 20 books, and his current expertise is helping other authors become international or best-selling authors and thereby become experts in their fields. Let's speak to Steve and find out how he changed his life by changing his mindset. Let's find out. Welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert, and today I'm so excited. We have the amazing, the wonderful Stephen Kidd. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us, Steve. Steve, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, share with everybody what it is that you do.
So I'm a third-generation minister, an international best-selling author of multiple books. I actually just put out my 20th book, but more importantly, I get to work with authors all day long. I'm a marketing company with a strong publishing division. We've worked with several thousand authors, helping them everywhere from concept through the writing, the publishing, and the marketing of their books to bestseller and beyond.
Wow. Okay. Fabulous. So, Steve, you said you're a third generation minister. So how does a minister's child get into entrepreneurship and business and so forth? I mean, I'm a money person, so I know growing up, the one thing that I hear from, doesn't matter which religion you go to, they're all the leaders say money is the root of all evil, and they have all these negative connections with money. How do you, which is very, very refreshing, by the way, talk us through your journey. How did you become the successful entrepreneur, coming from a very religious background?
Absolutely. So number one, that verse actually says it's the love of money. It's
Agreed.
the giving of yourself to money versus what money can do for you.
Yeah.
So it's important for us because, a lot of times people do definitely abuse that poor verse.
Yes.
But
and it's, if I just stop you there, it's not just in Christianity, it's across the spectrum, all religions, be it Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, it's there. And it's manipulation of words, God's words, for people's higher own good. But anyway, that's another conversation.
Yeah, totally. The answer to that is that I learned very early on that being a minister, doing what you're called to do, serving other people, just purely and truly serving other people, doesn't necessarily help you be able to pay the rent and feed your children. Now there are some ministers that are able and blessed to be able to do that, but very few of us are. And so from a very, very young age, I actually was in the business world. I started selling actually when I was 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's kind of a fun story. Actually, my parents bought cards and napkins for my brothers to sell, and they quickly discovered that they didn't really enjoy that too much and got jobs mowing lawns. And I was like, can I do it? How 5-year-olds are, right? I left with a bag of cards and napkins and came back with an empty bag and a pocket full of money. And I've been in sales and marketing ever since. So
well done you.
Yeah, it's been fun to see the two of those. But yeah, it's really an extension of everything that I am, and how I serve in the world is just by simply, serving people in that capacity.
Wow. Okay. So that's, at least that explains, how you end up being a successful entrepreneur now. You had the love for it was sort of born into you as a young child. I do find that I think entrepreneurs are a bit of a weird or different species. We don't fit into the convention of having a job. We can have jobs, but we're not satisfied. We're not happy in it, and I actually personally think we make pretty poor employees. I did my job very well, but I was a terrible employee. I wouldn't hire me, But because I was so good at it, I did pretty well. But it makes sense because we want to do something different. We want to think outside the box. We want to go beyond it. We want to cut corners. We want to be more productive and so forth. And it can be seen as not following the rules, because in a job you have to follow the rules and follow the system, and we don't fit that thing. So how did you go from that 5-year-old who just found this love for sales and found this love for entrepreneurship, to being now a successful, multi-national, international seller, multiple books? what talk us through your journey. What prompted you to come into writing?
I mean, I was a musician all my life. I was actually the lead singer in a band when I was 19.
Okay.
And I've written many songs. So I've always been writing in some sport. I even remember when I was a kid, I was writing little stories and stuff like that. It's just always been I've always been kind of a little bit of a storyteller.
Mm.
But yeah, really in 2007, my wife and one of our youngest daughters took a trip. They loved the movie Twilight, if you're familiar with that.
Mm.
And they went around because we lived in the area where the filming of the first movie had been. And they went to all the different filming sites and blogged about that. And
Ah.
I then helped them turn that into a book and publish that for them.
Mm.
And that's where we discovered, because we were already a marketing company, but that's where we discovered how powerful being a best-selling author is. In fact, it got to the
Mm.
point where the clients that we were working with, if they didn't have that title best-selling author, we made it happen for them. We take a
Mm.
signature talk or whatever and turn it into a book because we need that to maximize their marketing. So for
Mm.
then me personally, actually my first book, I was intending to write like a free giveaway, give me your
Mm.
email address and I'll give you this little 1-page sheet kind of thing
Mm.
or whatever. 110 pages later, I had a whole book written. Um, and, and I just fell in love with the process of it. And I've probably got 5 or maybe even 10 books that I'm working on right now. And it's a great way to be able to release that creative part of me and, share a little piece of who I am right now today in the world. And sometimes they go out in the world and sometimes they only ever are just what I needed to say that particular day.
Mm. I went through a similar experience with my book, and I've got 2 more in the pipeline which I haven't been given birth to because I just haven't found the time for it. But I remember, I did a lot of healing, and beginning of my chapter in my book is called Laws of Money, and it's all about money. But the beginning chapter is all about how I came to being from a lawyer to a money mindset expert. But it's a very personal journey, and it's funny writing that personal chapter about the abuse and about what I went through was, what was so cathartic. It was such a healing process, that I didn't realize I needed. I thought I dealt with that. I'm healed. I'm very successful, money mindset coach, and I was a podcast host by then and whatever else. I didn't realize I needed that too, to finalize the healing process and own who I am and what I am. And coming from a very, I suppose, South Asian background, where divorce is a big taboo. One divorce is taboo. I've got 2. Standing up and owning that. The book actually helped me to put it into paper and say, you know what, I'm very proud of who I am, and I'm so glad I was able to walk away from those marriages. And I'm not justifying yes and no, it was who was right or wrong. I'm just so proud of who I am. But the book allowed me to do it. So I understand what you mean. It's such a powerful process to even heal.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Let alone making it as part of your marketing strategies. So let's talk about that then. So how did you you said you went into marketing, so you became a musician and then you went into marketing. How did that happen?
Well, so the musician at that point actually was, you talk about this whole divergent of me being a minister and me being in the
A band.
business world. So the band was a Christian band. Okay.
Oh,
So it
okay.
was a ministry that I was doing, and then my day job, I was still running a company or working as an independent contractor or doing those kind of things somewhere in those days, mostly in sales space. So it was, and then the flip side to that is, and Gene Simmons, whether you like the band Kiss or not, Gene Simmons is one of the greatest marketers, really, probably as far as really talented marketing people that you'll ever run into. And like you said, love or hate him as a person, you got to respect the talent that he's had in that. And so that also did play out into that aspect of what I was doing in music in those days.
So I'm not familiar with him. Do you want to expand a bit about that? How was that relevant to you? Because I'm not familiar with him at all.
Gene Simmons, so the band Kiss, which
I'm
was
not familiar. I'm
huge.
not familiar.
Okay, well, Kiss was a relatively large band worldwide, especially during the late 70s and the early 80s. Um, I Want to Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day was their biggest song,
Mhm.
um, probably ever. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they've been a touring band for about 20 years, and at one point was the largest, most successful band as far as
Mhm.
just music groups go in rock and roll, at least. But simultaneously, he took he marketed everything. He's the ultimate merchandiser. Um,
Ah, okay.
you you'd find them all like used now, but back in the day when they were a popular band, there was everything. There were comic books and like figurines and coffee mugs and posters and anything that you could put their logo on, their faces on, any of that stuff. He had them available, and in fact,
That's actually quite groundbreaking in that area, because that
yeah.
nowadays is very common. That merchandise like that is very common nowadays,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but it wasn't then.
Wasn't then.
Mm.
And among other things, he actually owns a trademark to the money bag.
Oh
So whenever you
wow.
see the money bag, he actually owns that trademark.
Oh wow. Okay. All
And
right.
and as he got older, not that the band didn't still continue to tour, but because of all the success he had had, he's worked with many Fortune 500 companies, like the CEO of the
Mm.
Fortune 500 companies, developing very, very high end marketing strategies for, huge corporations.
Mm.
And that was all birthed off of just what he did, with the band, just,
Mm.
making hats and cups and shirts and all that kind of stuff.
But it sounds really interesting and very intriguing. I keep saying that now that's very common, but at that time it was groundbreaking. It's a new area, and to think that you can sell your faces on mugs, on on comic books and stuff like that. It's unique. Now it's not so much, because it's
Yeah.
most bands are doing it. So but I can't for somebody to take that came to a mind, and Backstreet Boys and all of that. They I remember seeing merchandise from them, but that was later on, obviously, because that was in the 2000s. Okay, so I'm still trying to figure out. So this inspired you to open a marketing company, and you went into marketing. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So, I worked doing different sales jobs throughout all of high school.
Mm.
And then when I was 19, I actually was working for a vacuum cleaner sales company and became the sales manager for that company.
Oh.
Um, and, so I learned not only the sales aspect, but I began to learn how to work and train and help people. Um, and so I graduated from high school in 1985. That was essentially late 1986, early 1987.
Mm.
And then in 1988, I actually was when I officially opened my marketing company. And back in those days, most of what I was doing was, we didn't have the internet in
Mm.
1987 or 1988. So we're talking gigantic, enormous catalogs that
Mm.
companies would have of, here's all these 10 million products you could buy. And my job was to find out what the person wanted, what the company wanted, that I was working with, and then dig through stacks and stacks of these kind of things and find them and put together proposals of, to meet what you're looking for, this is the best way to do it, as well as hopefully in most cases the most cost effective, not necessarily cheapest, but all of those factors in there. And so that was a lot of what we were doing.
Well, marketing has moved on heaps and bounds since then, which is amazing.
Hasn't it though?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think with the rise of internet, it also came up with, I think, the rise of Facebook ads and influencer ads and God knows what else, and shout outs and whatever else happens nowadays. It's just it's a complete different
Mhm.
ball game. And I think that's interesting in itself, because it gives individual podcasts as well, to the opportunity to market to their audiences as well. So it's a different era. Talk me through. So you landed on this. You ended up on landing this, releasing the book and realizing you're sitting on a gold mine with the possibility of having best-selling authors. How does that help your marketing? So how does being a bestseller help your clients?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, early days, before we actually even had the word the internet, I
Mm.
had moved into digital marketing space and have been in that space. And so by the time we're talking 2007, 90 to 95% of everything we're doing is all digitally related kind of
Mm,
things. Um, and then that book came out and it did really well. In fact, actually, that book, which is called Experience Twilight, it's written by my ex-wife, Kathy Kidd, if you ever want to look it up.
mm,
It still sells to this day. People are still really into that. And, one or two copies of the book will sell every month. And I was working at that time, basically pretty much one client at a time. I
mm,
would have one client that might be, as much as even a couple of years, because we were doing really high end,
mm,
taking people from, like $1 million to $2.5 million in what they were doing in annual revenue.
mm,
So really deeply intense stuff. And I literally created the process that I now do for everybody,
mm,
but I created the process to take their signature talk, because they were in demand speakers. And so
mm,
they had a very well honed signature talk. I would take that signature talk and turn it then into a book
mm,
for them on their behalf, and then learned all the nuances of how Amazon works and how to get the book and the ebook and all of that out and published for them.
mm,
And so we just did literally all that behind the scenes so that we could then go back to their website. Social media in especially 2007 wasn't as quite as prevalent
refined.
as what it is, but it existed. We were still
Mm.
mucking around in social media space even back then.
I think
Um,
then I think pay per click was more common, wasn't it, with Google ad, Google ads
yeah,
more
Google
specifically.
ads were real. I mean, that would have been kind of the ultimate you would have gone with right now. Right
Mm,
then would have been the right kind of a Google ad.
mm,
And the other, 2007, don't quote me on this, but 2007 probably would have been MySpace.
mm.
Uh,
It could be,
you
yeah,
know,
because
right
Facebook
around
was
that.
just was just coming to into in
Yeah,
itself. It's
Facebook was really just basically,
starting
I
out.
remember I joined it in like 2008-ish, and
Mm.
it was like a fancy active college yearbook kind of a
Yeah,
thing,
same here. I joined, I
divided
think,
up.
late
Yeah.
2007, early 2008, and it
Yeah.
was more of a just connecting to friends from
Yeah.
university and
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it wasn't nowhere near did I ever think of using it
Yeah.
as for
Right.
marketing purposes at the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Um, but in all of those places, even in the burgeoning social media, but especially on your website
Mm,
and in all of your advertising, it's the power of languaging.
mm,
So what makes marketing work is the imagery and the languaging that you use.
yeah.
Okay. So there's two ways I can sell you a Coca-Cola. Okay. I mean, because most of us are familiar with some type of soda,
Yeah.
Coke being typically the most popular
Yeah.
worldwide. I can either show you this picture. I was at a movie theater once and they had this one where this Coke is just pouring over this ice and it's just so enticing that, you find yourself almost wondering, should I get out of the seat real quick before the movie starts and go get a Coke? It was
Yeah.
very visually appealing. The other way is to use language that says things that it's like, I remember campaigning, this was a long time ago, but, it was like real, uh, I'm trying to think exactly how it was so long ago, like real women use XYZ,
Mm,
you know like there was the I forget what the product was, but it was like, a really empowered woman can bring home the bacon, can cook it up in a pan and be the best wife to her husband too, and buy this product and you will have all of that, and it was the languaging of that, because in that time, that was, part of the movement that was happening in the women's
mm,
movement. And so, that worked. And so one of the most universal, in fact, the number one social influencer, social or not, the number one influencer title currently is best-selling author. You
mm,
could become a medical doctor and say, I'm Dr. So and so, and this is what my specialty is. And if a person says, I'm the best-selling author of the book in this field,
mm.
they will have more
Authority.
authority in a person's subconscious than what the doctor is.
Mm,
And the reason why I know that is because all of my doctors tell me that. I've
mm,
gotten more out of the immediately becoming a best-selling author than having been a doctor in this field for 20 years.
mm,
And so and we were beginning to learn that, after that first book came out, and doing that with people and honing that and finding that just the ability. So we'll take something easy that most of us have done. You buy a course.
mm,
Okay. You can go out and get a course and it can be very powerful. But what if the languaging for the course says, This is the course based off of the international best-selling book on, in your case, finance. And just that, throwing in that phrase, it's the best selling, it's the international best selling book. All of a sudden people are like, well, how powerful must this course be if it's based off of something that was that? Did that answer your question?
It does very much so. I think it's a different element of marketing, and I think with the rise of I'm going to ask that question in a bit, actually, but I think with the rise of all the different tools available to us now, I think writing is a lot easier. I remember when I wrote my book, I'm dyslexic, I'm severely dyslexic. So writing for me has always been a challenge. And that's quite ironic considering my background is a lawyer. And so when I was writing, I was talking, I literally used something called, what's it called now? I forget, it's an app basically where you talk into the app and it writes, so not Google Words, but it's actually something else. And Otter, that's it. So I used Otter. I spoke into Otter and it wrote down my entire thing, and then I went through it afterwards. And there are also, especially with the rise of AI, there's so many more techniques available. Writing a book is not that difficult now. So how do you distinguish between, somebody can say, well, yeah, but becoming a bestseller, especially on Amazon now, is there's so many bestsellers and so forth. What's the it may have been great at one point in time when becoming a bestseller was difficult, because it's so easy to become bestseller now. How do we know that it's truly authentic and it's worth my time? How do you answer that question, especially with the rise of AI?
Well, number one, statistically speaking, over 80% of people in the world say they want to write a book. Less than 5% ever do. In fact, it's about 3.2 something that actually ever write that book. So first of all, even just getting the book out, you've broken into the top 5% of all people. Okay. Yeah. But then out of that 5%, when you go back, take that 5% of people and make that 100% of people who have books, only about 1 or 2% of those books ever become best-selling books. Even with as easily teachable. I don't want to undersimplify that. There are some nuances to it, but
yeah, of course,
even as much as I can do it for anybody, I have 100% success rate across the thousands and thousands of people that I've worked with. It still is an elite, exclusive group of people that did that. And I liken it into graduating from medical school. Okay. When you graduate from medical school, well, the same thing would be true when you were a lawyer. When you graduate from law school, that doesn't mean that you can or should or would be allowed to, take on the largest trial case in the world,
of course, yeah.
or do brain surgery as a doctor, that shows that doctorate that you get, whether you're talking medical doctorate or Juris Doctorate, says I have shown the knowledge capacity over this subject at a doctoral level, and now am going to go into the practice of. That's what we call, practicing attorneys, practicing doctors, is because then you learn all the practical applications of that. And really, best-selling author is that. It's the credential that shows and is you willing to put on paper your stuff and make it vulnerable to the world. Because, and I'm sure you remember when you took that test, you knew your stuff, but somebody else got to tell you that you did actually know what you knew. And the same thing is true with the bestseller. You put it out there, you know that your stuff, but then somebody else, in this case, a third party like Amazon, and the people purchasing in that are the ones that then validate, yes, you don't just know your stuff. We're going to give you the seal of approval that you have earned that certification. You have built that foundation that you're going to build everything else on. And then from there, we build everything else on it. So it's where we start. It's not someplace we're going to get to.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, on that point, I want to wrap this up. Sorry, Karen, just give me 1 second. I saw someone knocking the door. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pause it for a moment. Sorry, Karen, so you can just edit that bit out. So wrapping this up, where can we connect with you? How can we find you on the internet, Steve?
So the best thing to do, I love giving away free gifts. So I've created a free gift for your people. If
Hmm.
they go to ongoingwealthguide.com, that's ongoingwealthguide.com. I've put together a little free 5 tips to really being able to move from nothing to continuously being able to develop money coming into your, and more so an abundance, so that it's not a matter of if your bank account reaches zero, you're no longer wealthy, but more that you have that system in place to continue doing that. And there is a huge element of that. In fact, I even included in that the link to my free Write Your Bestseller in 1 Hour workshop. And that's a free gift for anybody that goes to ongoingwealthguide.com. They can get that there for free.
Wonderful. So if you're listening to us on the podcast, then the link, and actually the link to Steve's website, will be in the show notes. And if you're watching us on YouTube, then yeah, down below in the description section, check out the links as well. We will have them there for you. Check out and see how Steve can help you to write your bestseller. If there's a book inside of everybody, let's see if he can help you get that out and make it a bestseller. Thank you so much for joining us today, Steve. We will have to have you back on Money Talkies so we can discuss everything about being an author and being bestseller then. But for today, thank you for being such an amazing guest. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for listening to me and Steve today on Friday Feature. I will be back with another amazing guest, finding out how they changed their life by changing their mindset. Until the next time, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.